Welcome everyone to the on-demand recording of our presentation on trigger marketing. This presentation was originally recorded on April 24th, 2019 as a lunch and learn designed to give our listeners the information that they need without taking up too much of their time. In this session, I cover some things that I think everyone should know about trigger marketing, including why this type of campaign is important and how to implement one into your marketing strategy. Before I get started, I'd like to take a minute to introduce myself. I'm Allison Jensen, and I'm the marketing manager for Compu-Mail. A little bit about us. Compu-Mail works with progressive marketers to increase customer spend by helping them talk to their customers, their donors, their patrons, in a way that their competition isn't. We serve a variety of industries, including retail, education, nonprofit, insurance, casino gaming, financial, and others. Since this is an on-demand recording, I'm not going to go over all of the housekeeping items, but I will leave them here for your reference. Our contact information is available at the end of the presentation, and you're welcome to reach out to me at any time. For those of you that might be tweeting about this presentation, please feel free to tag us at your Compu-Mail. And with that, we will jump to the recorded content and get started. I like to begin a lot of my presentations with a definition of the topic. This is just to make sure that we're all on the same page and looking at the information from the same perspective. So here is a definition from HubSpot that gives a great overview of trigger marketing. A trigger event is any occurrence that creates an opening for a marketing or sales opportunity. Sales and marketing automation workflows use trigger events to enable small organizations to scale customer interactions. One thing that I would like to add is that I think this article was geared towards smaller to medium-sized businesses, and I do want to point out that trigger marketing is also great for larger organizations, and automating the follow-up process might even be more necessary on the larger scale just because there might not be an effective way to do that manually. But the key here is that trigger marketing applies consumer behavior to tailor a response. And a quick example, which we'll get into many more later, an abandoned shopping cart is a trigger. It notifies a company that the person is interested in their product, but due to some circumstance did not complete the purchase. The company then has the ability to be able to follow up with a reminder campaign to all customers of that nature via email or direct mail. The consumer acts, the company learns about the consumer from the action, and then the company plans accordingly. So that trigger starts that process. And we look at trigger marketing as falling into 4 categories. The first category is behavioral triggers. These include the opening of an account, a request for information, a change in purchasing patterns or browsing patterns, a website interaction, and other events along those lines. These events can signify that a person is interested in making a purchase or a donation, and this interest should initiate a follow-up, an automated follow-up, to give that person more information to get them to come back and complete the purchase if they haven't already, or take another relevant next step, whatever that next step is. The next category is transactional triggers. So these are based around just that, transactions. So in this case, the person has made the purchase, made the donation. It could be their very first transaction with you, or they could be a repeat customer or donor. But this event or action should trigger or initiate an automated workflow to get them, to retain them, to get them to purchase from you again, make a donation again, just keep repeating that process. The third category is recurring triggers. So these events happen on a regular basis. They could be a holiday, they could be a birthday, they could be an expiration date, an anniversary, or any other significant recurring event. The trigger here is the date. The final category that we'll cover today is threshold triggers. These type of triggers occur when a customer or a donor hits a minimum or exceeds a maximum. So examples include hitting a credit limit or reaching a certain lead score. Setting threshold triggers is important because there could be situations that you either need or you want to immediately contact the customer to resolve the situation or take the next step in the cycle. So now that we know what event categories qualify as triggers, we can take a closer look at why this type of marketing is so important. The first is the automation aspect. So rather than having to follow up manually with every single lead or customer, your trigger marketing allows you to initiate that automated workflow that does the heavy lifting for you. So in these workflows, you can use the data that you collect throughout the customer journey to deliver relevant and timely messages right at the time the customer or prospect is the most receptive to them, and continue along the path of the customer journey. So another important aspect is the ability to personalize the messages. This might be the most important aspect. Trigger messages are more personal than static or generic messages because they are targeted to the customers right at their specific stage in the customer journey, rather than just blasting out the same exact messages to everybody across the board, no matter where they're at, whether they're looking for information for the first time, whether they purchased from you. It's important to make sure that you're targeting what that specific part of the journey is. And there's a really interesting stat here. Nearly 80% of consumers are more likely to do business with a company that offers personalized experience. So that comes from the ANA, the DMA response rate report that they did last year. So when you look at how to implement triggers, you have to think about which of the right tactics are the best for your customers, your audience. So here I'm going to call these arrows to keep with that targeting, that trigger theme. The first arrow that we'll talk about is direct mail, which is seeing its highest response rate in years. I can send you a copy of the stats that we compiled from the ANA DMA response rate report that I had just mentioned, if you're interested in seeing what those response rates look like. Something that I always find interesting is that a person sees up to 2,900 marketing messages a day. So that includes all of the email, the mail that they receive, the banner ads that they're exposed to online, the billboards or outdoor banners that they drive by on the way to work, even the branded items that they have, on their desk or in their home. I mean, just looking around the room that I'm sitting in, my water bottle, my coffee mug, they all have logos on them. My computer has a logo on it. I'm sitting in front of a whiteboard. It has expo markers on there, so I can see, those logos. Branding is everywhere. Logos are everywhere. So that 2,900, when you think about it, is really easy to add up to. So with all of that marketing clutter, surrounding a person day in, day out, print and mail are the ones that cut through the clutter. The tangible and memorable aspect of print works to amplify digital marketing efforts. And in the context of trigger marketing, if you automate the process to send someone a physical piece of mail after they take an action that registers their interest with you, it goes a long way towards getting that next purchase or that next donation. So you might send a physical card for someone's birthday with a discount, or maybe a postcard with a thank you for their recent order and an offer for free shipping on their next purchase. The next arrow that we'll talk about is email, which is another great means for following up with the customer. Here, you can send them digital versions of that birthday card that I mentioned or the thank you note that I mentioned, whatever event or trigger that you're following up on. And, if you're looking for an immediate contact point with a customer, email could be a great option for that. Once the customer clicks the button to make their purchase or learn more about your product, your service, or your cause, your automated workflow allows you to immediately be in front of them with that next message. The final arrow that we'll talk about here is banner ads and digital retargeting. So this is a good way to keep your message in front of the customer until they're ready to come back to your website and take the next action. And when you're looking at what I'll call the shelf life of a message, direct mail and banner ads both have longer ones than email because your customer can keep the physical copy of the mail piece, and the banner ads are automatically going to appear on their browser for however long you dictate, whereas an email could get deleted and then they're not going to see it again. So a couple notes to wrap up this slide. It's not one arrow or tactic versus the other. It's not print versus digital. Each of these arrows has their own advantages and disadvantages and actually work best when they're planned together as part of a coordinated campaign. And you don't have to use them in the order that I just explained them in. You don't have to do direct mail, then email, then banners. The nature of your product, your cause, your service, and where that customer or donor is in their customer journey, and even their demographics can determine, which is the best for reaching them and when to reach them with it. So if you're looking to implement trigger marketing, you're going to need a few things to get started. You want to start by establishing an identifier in the data for the trigger. So that could be if you're setting up a transactional trigger and a purchase triggers the next action. Or you might be setting up a behavioral trigger and a website visit could trigger the next action. So whatever in your database is that trigger, you want to be able to identify that and kind of set your parameters so you know once they hit that mark, once they hit that threshold, whatever it is, your message can deploy. So your database holds a lot of this information about your contacts, so it's just important to identify which pieces are the triggers, which pieces are the most important to you. So once you know the actions that you're targeting and the follow-up actions that are needed to take place next, you want to gather up all of your creative assets, including the branding, the images, the variations of your message that will fuel the automated personalized messaging. Then you'll establish the business rules. So that's what happens when the trigger is pulled. So this could be the format that's deployed, whether it's a follow-up postcard or a follow-up self-mailer, letter, whatever you want it to be, what images and messages you want to pull in, and any other important rules that dictate the personalization of that piece. You want to be able to make sure that when you're sending out that automated piece, that it's completely customized based on where they are. So you just need to have all of those assets kind of up front, which sounds like a lot of work, but it's actually a little bit simpler than you might think. But finally, you'll set your trigger so that everything is coordinated to deploy once the action takes place. So now I would like to spend a little bit of time working through some practical examples by industry or vertical. I want everyone on this presentation to be able to walk away with something that they can apply to their own business. And if I don't mention your industry or vertical as I go through here, please feel free to reach out to me afterwards and we can kind of discuss your situation. But I'm going to start with the Automotive Aftermarket, which I think is a really great example of trigger marketing because there's so many opportunities to trigger a follow-up. This industry falls into mostly the transactional and recurring triggers. So we've probably all seen examples of this that we can think of. You go in for an oil change and then 3 months later you get a postcard with an offer for an oil change saying that it's time for another one. This is a strategic move by service centers because it puts the message in front of the customer at the time that it's needed. And this is also common for annual inspections and other types of service besides just those oil changes. So another example for service providers is following up on a quote request if the service wasn't performed at the time of the visit. Chances are here, the customer could be shopping around, and if you send them a discount, that might help them make their decision. It might bring them back into your store. So for casino gaming marketers, there's a lot of transactional triggers that take place here when the patron is on the gaming floor, or depending on the other things offered by the casino, when that patron is maybe shopping or dining. Shopping and dining could also fall under behavioral triggers. So if there's changes in spending habits in terms of either increasing or decreasing the amount of money that they spend, in addition to the money that's spent on the gaming floor, that could trigger some sort of follow-up. And the birthdays and anniversaries are of course, recurring triggers here. So they open up a great opportunity to get the patron in the door with some free play, knowing that once they're there, they're probably going to spend a little bit more money. For higher education marketers, behavioral triggers are important. If a prospective student visits a website or maybe requests to learn more about a university, it's important to follow up with them. Threshold triggers are important here too. Reaching a certain age or a number of years in school can qualify someone as a prospective student or transfer student. And then for alumni engagement, recurring triggers like graduation anniversary could be a good way to target former students as well. Then for financial marketers, there's several categories of triggers that could fit. Opening an account was one of the first things that we mentioned when we started talking about behavioral triggers. This is key because once someone has a checking account with a financial institution, they can start to send them information about savings account, credit cards, debit cards, and things like that. And then the day-to-day transactions that they make are, of course, transactional triggers, and then credit limits are threshold triggers. If somebody is shopping online for insurance and they request a quote either for a first-time insurance purchase or maybe to compare it against their current insurance plan, this is a behavioral trigger. They might also inquire about adding additional services to their package, so that's another trigger there. So behavioral triggers might also exist when a person ages into a certain insurance level. In home and auto insurance, this could be, when a person reaches an age that they can rent a car. In terms of healthcare insurance, this could be when a person ages into Medicare. And it could also be when a young adult ages out of their parents' insurance plan. So this is just a great point to reach out to parents, about having one less person on their plan, and then to the young adult about getting their own plan. And it's especially great during open enrollment period. So that's a good way to, set the triggers for the insurance. Then for nonprofits, transactional triggers such as giving history, size of gift, frequency or timing of donation are important. And when I say frequency or timing, that could be, if you have a donor that always donates at a certain time of the month, or maybe at the same holiday every year, maybe you send them several campaigns over the course of the year and they only donate in December around those holidays. That's important to know. But nonprofits should take into consideration the donor's history with their organization as well as other similar causes. A donation to another cause like yours could indicate that they might be interested in donating or volunteering with your organization as well. They just might not have heard from you or gotten a message from you for a while. So there's also recurring triggers that are important to nonprofits, like events, annual galas, holidays, organization anniversaries that celebrate important times in the nonprofit's history, like when they were founded. So those are important to keep in mind as well. And then moving into retail products, these offer a number of opportunities for triggers as well. This could be behavioral triggers like viewing product pages or requesting information about products. It could be abandoning a cart. It could be transactional triggers like purchases, or even recurring triggers like the customer's birthday or their anniversary of their first purchase, or maybe when they became a member. Those are all important triggers that you can base your marketing off of. And then you'll see that this slide here, service retail is pretty similar to product retail. It's just, it doesn't have that abandoned cart. Although in the sense of, when I talked about the automotive aftermarket, there could be that abandoned cart, but it's, coming in for a quote on service and then not making the purchase. You don't add anything to a physical cart, but it's still kind of that same concept. So a quick case study from a Compu-Mail customer. Their challenge was, a regional retailer hired Compu-Mail to assist them in maximizing their customer information. They had about 100 stores in the northeastern U.S. at the time, and we reviewed their database. We identified triggers for cross-sell and upsell opportunities as well as re-engagement opportunities. So that's a really important thing that you can do with your triggers. And the direct mail campaigns that we sent alerted customers to timely offers, resulting in a 1,000% growth over a period of about 15 years. So once they put that program in place, once they started sending out follow-up direct mail, reminders and things like that, they definitely saw some growth there. So this just about wraps up today's presentation. It did run about 20 minutes instead of the allotted 30, so we'll definitely have time for questions at the end. But just to reiterate what I had said before, if you want to implement trigger marketing, you must first gather your creative assets. So that's, getting ready. And then you want to establish your business rules, aim, and then set your triggers to fire. If you're interested in learning more, you can always contact us. I'll be sending out copies of these 2 white papers here, which have some great tips for personalizing your campaigns. So the first one is Personalization Made Easy, and then the other one is Achieving Personalization Through Variable Data Messaging. And if you need help coordinating any of your direct mail campaigns along the way, we're here for you. For those of you that might not be familiar with us, we're a full-service mail service provider. We work closely with the United States Postal Service to ensure that you're getting the best possible postage rates on your mail. And our primary focus is delivering quality print and mail solutions, and our expertise in various disciplines of direct marketing could provide a valuable solution to help simplify your campaigns. So we hope you find as much value in this content and in trigger marketing as we do. So with that, we'll move to some questions. And since we're using the conference line today, feel free to just ask your question out loud, unmute your mic, ask your question. 2 of our sales representatives, Michael Oliver and Chris Hill, are on the line with us, and they will be assisting me with some of your questions as well. I do have some questions that we've gotten, just when we talk about trigger marketing with some of our customers, some of our prospects, that I can share with you guys if you don't have any questions off the top of your head. One of them is, what recommendations do you have to someone that's just looking to start a trigger campaign? And the very first recommendation is just to start small. So it's so much easier to identify just a few things that you want to do and then build the complexity and the products over time. So you don't have to jump in and automate all of your marketing, all of your campaigns or anything like that. Just pick one, product category or one small thing that you can start with and kind of expand it over time. You'll want to seek a format that enables, easy expansion in the future. So maybe it's variable copy, maybe it's the offer area, things like that. And then you'll want to pick, the best products that can be meaningful to your business. So, start with high margin products. Start with identifying well-valued, responsive customers. So you don't necessarily need to start with your lapsed customers or lapsed donors or unengaged customers or anything like that. Look for the people who are making the purchases and that you can keep retaining and keep making them make purchases over time. Make sure that you're getting great offers to your commodity types of buyers. So if anybody, buys your product because it's a low price, you'll want to make sure that your offer is kind of centered around that. And then you just want to make sure that you have a strong call to action, that your offer is clearly, identifying what you want the customer to do, what you want them to think about your brand, and, just make it really easy for them to respond.
Allison, I thought somebody had a question they were starting to ask. If there's somebody on the line that is asking a question, please feel free to go now. Okay, maybe not.
Okay. Well, if anyone does have a question, feel free to jump in. I'm going to share, another one that we've talked about with some people here and there. A lot of people do ask, what's the type of format that most customers are using for their triggers. So postcards and self-mailers, I think I mentioned it earlier, but they are some of the most popular just due to the ease of production and mail speed. So it's really easy to, set up a program where you're sending, daily, weekly, monthly, whatever kind of files, and sending them out, within a couple days of receiving those files. And then, specific industries, due to the sensitive nature of their business, they might prefer to keep the offers and details within an envelope. So if you're in a financial institution, if you are working in insurance or medical, with HIPAA and everything like that, you might prefer to keep your offers, within an envelope because it can't be on the outside. It can't be on a postcard where anybody could see this information. That could warrant more of a letter pack versus that postcard or self-mailer. They might not be able to take advantage of those formats because of the privacy, but either way, you'll still see a response for it. It doesn't seem like there's any other questions, but really quick before I sign off, I'll just share a couple examples of mistakes that people might make when setting up trigger campaigns. So if you don't have good data or reliable data, maybe it's really old. If you have poor information on the sales, the transactions that you have, if you're not including, returns when people, move and things like that, and you get the return back, that's not really gonna set you up for success with a trigger campaign. If you aren't able to act quickly, that could set you up for failure, things like that. Okay, and with that, I'll let everyone go. So thank you so much for joining me today. Have a great rest of your day.